So I'm John Kane, and I welcome you to Let's Talk Native on this Tuesday, December 10th. While this program may not provide a path to spiritual enlightenment, we do start, and in some cases, or encourage, in some cases, start conversations. We don't do prayers. We don't do buffalo speeches. We take a tough look at our history, oppression, and survival. We talk about culture, the arts, politics, and identity, and we may step on a few toes along the way. But our real goal here is to bring people together by breaking down what separates us. We'll take on the false narratives and provide critical thinking to all that is heaped upon us. And we do it all right here from the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation. So let's talk Native. But first, let me remind people that our audio streams live at www.letstalknative.com. And we stream live video of the show on our Facebook group page via Facebook Live. Our shows are available as podcasts on your favorite podcast platform immediately after we air. And we put our video up on our YouTube channel, Let's Talk Native TV. So subscribe to our podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you can also follow us on Instagram at Let's Talk Native TV and Twitter at Let's Talk Native. I'm the host of Let's Talk Native, and I'm assisted by Jake Proud here in studio, who's managing our video and our sound. All right, let me get into it. Sorry for the late start. It'll be a little bit of a bridge show. We've got a snowstorm moving in, which I had to drive through all the way from Pennsylvania. That's why everything that combined with some updates on our camera system, everything that could have gone wrong got us off to a late start. But I do have an issue that I specifically want to talk about, and I want to explain a little bit how it came to me. One of my friends in New York, Melissa Oakes from Akwesasne, she is the director of the American Indian Community House. She shared a couple of links with me this week, and I don't know if it was just today or yesterday, about the Ramapo Lenape getting a church donated to them. And of course, the whole church thing is it creates a bunch of questions. But I don't know what they're going to do with the church. I assume on some level the reason the church got donated is because the congregation was busted. I mean, I assume that they were probably financially strapped, and they figured, well, this was a good thing that they could do, and perhaps the real goal was to get the Lenape to continue to operate the church, so it was no longer a burden to them. I don't know. It could all be for great reasons. I offered a comment to you can find it on my Facebook group page. I offered a comment about the gift or the transition. And I know, look, I know Vincent Mann, I know Dwayne Perry, I know these guys, and I know some of the struggles that they've gone up against. And I'm not going to concentrate on them on this thing. But the question came to me, that I started to think about is, who has the most influence on us on our territories? I mean, I look, even as a native communities, and frankly, with the possible exception of Ganyonge, I don't know any native community, or not the possible, they are definitely the exception, but I don't know any native community that doesn't have a half dozen or more churches on their community. They may only have one longhouse, or if they have that, they may only have one longhouse, maybe two longhouses, like in Akwesasne, because of some splits there. But we have a bunch of churches on everyone. Even Onondaga has a bunch of churches. In fact, they busted a couple of native kids who burnt a few of them a few years back. But and I'm not advocating that. And my question here is, where do our influences come from? Look, we've got half dozen or more churches on our territories. Our kids are educated in the non-native schools outside of our territories. We may have a language or an education department, but we aren't really educating our kids. Frankly, even our education department has mostly non-native people employed. So as I start breaking this stuff down, I start thinking about this thing. Where do our influences come from? I mean, I got to be honest. I mean, we've lost our way quite a bit, since going back, to our ancestors' days, right? I mean, look, and this is almost painful to say, but our own people were being led by the Hollywood images of ourselves. Back in the 50s, and our people were wearing Plains Indian headdresses. Why? Because we didn't know any better. Our own chiefs, they weren't wearing the stoas with with antlers. No, they were decked out with a whole bunch of eagle feathers down on a Plains Indian headdress. Descalhe from who's Levi General, famous advocate for Native issues. Look at the way he was dressed in his time. I mean, and I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying we had been separated so much from our identity, and part of that separation has come at the hands of churches. It's come at the hands of the education systems around us. It's come at the hands of Hollywood, newspapers, books, poems, all that stuff. Buffalo Bill's Wild West shows. So, I mean, I beg the question, are we doing enough? I mean, as our kids still struggle, and again, I say it almost every week. We lead in all the categories you don't want to lead in. I mean, we lead in substance abuse and suicide and depression and poverty and missing and murdered Indigenous women, death by cop, all these things that we lead in. Why is it? I mean, are we genetically predisposed to have these problems? No. These are driven by what we do. They're driven by policies that have been imposed upon us and our own decisions that we've made. Look, I'm not criticizing the fact that Native territories have churches on them. But are we applying any pressure to those churches to tell some truth beyond whatever they do from their pulpits or whatever else? But the doctrine of Christian discovery or Christian domination, are we telling any of that truth? Are we asking these churches to for any reparations? Because they all made money off of us, and they made money off the federal government when they're running residential schools, all that stuff. But as I sit here today, I'm thinking, how many things in our community, including us as parents and grandparents, how many of us are taking the steps that we need to do, that we need to take to mitigate the influences that are imposing assimilation on us, even self-imposed assimilation? I mean, are we really doing enough? Because as I got to tell you, as I look across our territories, we have many more things that we've accepted into our communities. Many more things that we've accepted into our communities that are driving us towards assimilation. And very few things. And I'm not criticizing the Seneca Nation specifically, or Akwesasne or Onondaga or any place. Look, there's a certain level that's happening on every one of our communities where we are not giving our children the foundation that they need to have. I mean, and here's the crazy part. These churches are all private sector. Look, the churches don't own any property. We've given it to them. Our people have given it to them. So here's some guy standing up in front of these churches, and I don't know any of them. So I'm not criticizing an individual, but the idea that somebody is managing our spirituality on our territories, on property that we provided to them. And now you balance that against what our kids are inundated with in schools. Look, and it's not just the wrong stuff that they're taught about Columbus, about the founding fathers of the United States. It's not just the wrong stuff. Let me take that back. It's not just the stuff that they're not taught. I mean, because I've talked about this on a previous show. It has been, I mean, it's well known. It's been put out there. There's been a big push lately to mitigate the fact that there is nothing taught to any kids about Native people past the year 1900. Nothing is taught. It's like we disappeared at the dawn of the 20th century. Oh yeah, the 19th century, all the 1800s. I mean, it's filled with all kinds of stuff. Although most of that stuff's not taught properly. Nobody's really talking about what Lincoln did to the Dakota 38, the largest mass execution in the history of the United States. Nobody's talking about how the lands were deceived from Native people. So even though we're not mentioned at all at the turn of the century, what is taught about the 19th century is mostly wrong. So not only is all this stuff withheld, not just from our kids, but from the general population. So Americans don't know a damn thing about what was done to Native people. It's not something that Americans would be proud of. Although they still don't have a problem, taking our images and slapping on a football helmet, calling themselves fierce warriors, Redskins, Indians, Mohawks, whatever. The list goes on. But with no commitment, even as they're mocking us, with no commitment to educate anybody. So our kids go through this stuff. I mean, the first thing that they're taught in kindergarten is to pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. And we don't even stand up and tell our kids, no, you don't have to do that until they're several years later. For the most part, we don't. Look, I know some of you are listening and watching are going to say, oh, I did. I made sure my kids knew it right from, well, not a whole lot of you did that. We don't teach our own kids about what racism is. And, somebody posted today, he says, how do you respond to racism? And some people say, I just ignore it. Really? If you just ignore it, then you're complicit in it. I posted a meme the other day. I said, look, if you claim you're not racist, that's not enough. If you are not an anti-racist, if you don't spend some portion of your life combating racism, even in your own life, and combating your own perhaps racist tendencies, then you're complicit in it. And if you're the victim of racism and you just choose to ignore it, let people get away with that, then you're complicit with it too. We have an obligation to protect our children. Look, I used to think the way to protect my children was to shelter them from it. And I was wrong. Because my kids experienced it anyway. I can't say that they were ill prepared for it, but I don't think I properly prepared. I don't think I played a role in properly preparing them for it. So again, when I think about how accepting we are of American legions, churches, veterans of foreign VFWs, or what are the veterans of foreign wars? I don't know. All of these, all of these other clubs and associations, these organizations. When Matt, my buddy Matt and I, we would do a scorecard every Seneca Fall Festival when they do their parade. We keep score on how many American flags were carried in that parade versus how many Seneca flags, how many Hiawatha Belt flags, how many warrior flags, unity flags. Trust me, American flags went out hands down. It's not even close. 2-1 over anything else. For things like the unity flag or the Hiawatha Belt flag, it's much less. Maybe a few Seneca flags. So when do we? And again, let me get back to the church issues, because those churches are not, they're not sanctioned or sponsored or subsidized by the Seneca Nation. No, they're all private. They're all private things. Look, I know you go out to Choctaw in Oklahoma. They got a big billboard. That this is God's country. They made an official announcement that Christianity is the official religion of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. Yeah. They didn't get the whole separation of church and state thing that the way the United States claims to have gotten, right? And I think, honestly, I'm gonna, I know people are gonna disagree with me. I think you could still be a Christian and advance Native identity. I don't think you should. People get into this saying, well, I'm a this first, that second. First I'm a Christian, then I'm an American, and then I'm a New Yorker. We'll hear people say stuff like that. Well, I got news for you. First, we're human beings. What we're going to put second on that, and if we're going to allow, let's be honest here. Christianity is not our culture. First of all, it's not our culture. It's imposed. When I say imposed, I mean it came to us with a sword. It came to us with death. So don't make any mistakes about it. And black folks, this goes for you too. So all you devoted, Baptists, Southern Baptists, you dedicated, devoted Southern Baptists, all of you guys, in the black churches. I got nothing for you either. I don't know what to tell you guys. Because those churches were used to justify slavery. Every one of them. Those churches were used to justify the murder, even the rape of our people. I'm not saying, I almost said, I'm not saying they're doing it, they're still doing it. But I guess when you look at the clergy sex scandals, and I maintain, and I've said it before, so I'll say it again, I maintain much of that sex abuse began in the church-run residential schools in the U.S. and Canada. I'm not saying, the Catholics and the Baptists weren't having some problems or any of them. Mormons, all of them. Mormons, that's even creepier because when you think of the polygamy standpoint and kind of some of what versions of Mormonism are have embraced. Look, I'm not going to sit here and condemn every religion, but I do know what's happened to Native people at the hands of these people who claim to be, spiritually superior because they have the one God, right? That's what they claimed. And based on that belief, we were almost regarded as subhuman. Look, the doctrine of Christian discovery or doctrine of Christian domination wasn't just about taking land. It was about a complete subjugation of our people. And look, a few churches have at least repudiated the notion of a superiority based on religion. Kinda. They say it. A few of them issued formal statements rejecting the doctrine of Christian discovery. They haven't done anything to mitigate it. There's no reparations have been offered by anybody. So, again, when I see the story of the Ramapo getting a church donor, I said, man, I take it too. And you know what I turn it into? I turn it into, I don't know, some sort of center to teach about the doctrine of Christian discovery. To teach about the mind control that has come with indoctrination, not just with Christianity, all of it. All of the myths told about founding fathers. Look, our kids are being taught that these guys are heroes. Every one of them. Every slave-holding one of those guys. We don't teach our 5-year-olds and our 6-year-olds and our 7-year-olds the truth about this stuff. And we should. We should frame. If you're going to say something positive about George Washington, then you better balance it with some truth that's the negative truth about him. If you're going to talk about Abraham Lincoln emancipating the slaves, well, how about the execution that that occurred a week before he stood at the pulpit with his Emancipation Proclamation in January of 1863? That execution that took place the day after Christmas in 1862. 38, the largest mass execution in the history of the United States. Nobody's teaching our kids that. Forget about going into the 20th century with residential schools that would continue to the 1970s. With bearing toxic waste on our territories. San Carlos Apache coming up with drums of Agent Orange in the river. Open uranium pits across Lakota territory. Nuclear radioactive waste leaching into the Cattaraugus Creek here on the Seneca Nation. Pipelines through our territories. Electric lines through our territories. Highways through our territories. And then we pay to ride on them. We actually pay to drive on the thruway. Man, talk about indoctrination. Talk about assimilation. So when do we start to take a little bit more charge of this? I guess that's my question. So I put some of this stuff out, and I'm sorry, this is a bit of an abridged show tonight because of weather and other things. But I'm going to expand on this thought probably in a future show. But who are we going to allow, not just to influence our children, but to influence us every single day? Look, I'm not calling for a mass exodus for all you churchgoers who go every Sunday, but at least think about it a little bit. Think about what that church is, what your church has done. And don't sit there and say, oh, my church didn't do any of that. Yes, they all did. They all did. Every Protestant religion, look, so whether you're talking about the Anglican churches, whether you're talking about the Protestant, look, they all did it. Those Puritans, when we talk about the Thanksgiving being the national day of mourning for Native people, there's a reason we talk about that. Because of the slaughters. Our people had never seen those levels of atrocities. And it's not because we didn't wage war amongst ourselves. We did. Look, we did terrible things to each other. But these terrible things, massacring babies, flaying skin, there's a Bible. And it probably isn't the only one. But you can look it up online. If you don't believe me, there is a Bible in the world today that has native skin on that is bound. The cover of that Bible has been made from human leather from native people. And it's not the only book they did this with. The Bible. Probably King James Version. So I got to ask that question. I mean, when I ask the question, who influences our identity? Look, take a number. There's a whole lot of things. But we're pretty far down the list. Our longhouses are pretty far down the list. Our leadership, wherever you're, our teachers, our storytellers, us as parents and grandparents, we're pretty far down the list. Look, even if we could compete with the churches or the schools, we don't barely have a presence. Look, on the internet, we're losing our kids to Facebook. I got 7,000, members on my group page. But I'm lucky to get 1,000 views on a video that I do. So, and that's spread out across a whole bunch of native territories and non-native people watching. We're losing the battle, folks. So we want to win hearts and minds of our own kids. We better step it up. Look, I'm going to take a break here. We're only going to run to about the top of the hour, but I'm going to take a brief break here. Catch my breath, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native.
I'm loving the water. Seems so calm to me. Loving the water, it comes so naturally. It's a gift from my mother, we can't deny. The day we lose it is the day, that's the day we die. No more senseless death, it should have never been. No more senseless death, drinking water that's not clean. It should be a right for all humanity to supply clean water, not for money, not for greed. What have we done? Put poison in the heart. Hey! What have we done to our children's future? souls to the very last drop.
All right, a little more Murray Porter for your pleasure. Look, thanks for coming back. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native. Look, this issue that I'm talking about in terms of identity and who's influencing it is important to me. But before I get back into it, let me go ahead and thank my sponsors. I want to thank Ross and Holly John and the RJE family of businesses, Eric White at ERW Enterprises, the good folks at Grand River Enterprises and Native Wholesale Supply. Look, I mean, even the sponsorship issue. I am grateful for those guys who do something every week or every month. But that's only three. Essentially three entities. NWS and GRE are kind of connected. I mean, so when I think about what we're doing, I mean, I know these churches they probably got more people in every one of the churches than I have listeners. That's for damn sure. Just here in Seneca territory. And there's churches in Tuscarora and Tonawanda and Onondaga. I mean, and you know what? Much of the leadership in these communities are devoted, Christians. And I think even if you have that faith, it should be on you even more to balance it off with educating about our culture and about who we are. I mean, look. Christmas, Thanksgiving, 4th of July, all the stuff we're inundated with. Most Native people have had their culture stripped away. Again, go back to the residential schools. I mean, I talk to schools sometimes, and I think about this. If I go into a classroom and I told all those kids in there, Native, non-Native, and I said, think about being taken from your home and gone someplace, and you're told you can no longer celebrate things like Christmas and Halloween. No more trick or treat. No more Easter bunny. None of that stuff. All that stuff. Where and in fact, if you even try, we're going to punish you because that's what it would be like, right? That's what our kids went through. They said no more Thanksgiving. No more strawberry ceremony. No more. In fact. We're not going to let you talk the language that you grew up knowing. I mean, think about that. And the crazy part is, it's easy. I mean, it's easy for people to assume, well, once we lost our language, that's where it all went downhill. No, we started losing a lot while we still had the language. Look, my father's generation were all fluent speakers. And in Seneca territory, you might have to go back maybe one more generation, but that's only one or two generations. The land loss, the Christian influence. I don't have it anymore, but I was given a Bible that was printed all in Mohawk from Gunawaga. I had that in my possession for years. I didn't know what I was ever going to do with it, and they have lost it over the years. So even we had the language. My aunt was a somewhat semi-famous singer. She sang for the Pope in Mohawk. Translated all of the hymns in Mohawk, and in these churches here in Seneca Territory, they've done the same thing. Translated a bunch of church hymns into Seneca. Our problem wasn't just the loss of language. I mean, that is a problem. But there are people who are donating, putting money in the plate every single Sunday. And I've got 3 sponsors for what I do. And look, I get it. I know some of the stuff that I do, I talk about, does nothing but piss people off. I mean, even my my White Skins T-shirt idea that I talked about on my last show, and I've got it promoted. I get this one white guy from Neshaminy who is against using the R word, or he was against the school calling themselves Redskins. But he's been lashing out at me left and right saying, oh, yeah, your two wrongs don't make a right. Wait a second here. Do you not get it? I'm not starting a $1 billion franchise called the Whiteskins. This is parody. This is mocking the mockery. It's not racist for me to create a shirt that mocks a racist act. But this is, and you know what? Some native people agree with him. So when I think about those influences, sports, I mean, all of it. I mean, I'm glad that we got the Thompson brothers. These guys who, came in and made a big splash in lacrosse, Zeddy Williams and others. I mean, I'm glad that, because I saw more of our kids wanting to wear John Tavares Bandits jerseys than anything. That was the number one selling Bandits jersey. Bandits being the pro lacrosse team here in Buffalo. So even a sport that was ours, we became the big fans of the white guys. And forget about the other sports. I mean, again, all these other sports literally mock us. The Cleveland Indians, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Washington Redskins, the Atlanta Braves. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs, all of this stuff. And in spite of them grabbing our images and mocking us, no commitment back. No commitment back. This is, we've grabbed your imagery, so we're going to pay you something back. We want to give back to Native people for what we've taken or for what we've continued to use. No, nothing. Nothing. No education, no commitment to language programs, no commitment to telling some true history. None of that stuff. And again, I talk about Hollywood. Look, our people, I still see people posting pictures of Iron Eyes Cody with the tear, the guy with, crying over the pollution, the littering. Completely oblivious to the fact that he's not native. I mean, just completely oblivious. Why? Because we bought what was sold to us. That is considered one of the most successful public service announcements of all time. And they couldn't even use a real native person. So even when somebody puts some value on us, they put a little more value on somebody else who can play us better than we play ourselves. Why? And because we bought into it. There's some native people who are John Wayne fans. Didn't matter how many Indians he killed on the screen or on TV. Look, and I'm not saying that we gotta spend the rest of our lives hating anything that's not native, but there should be some balance, which is what I come back to, because that's what's missing in all this. The scales aren't level. I mean, the fact that I've got to debate somebody because they think that I'm trying to not just turn the tables, but that somehow by creating a Whiteskins T-shirt with Trump's image on it, that somehow I've evened the score. No, we're not even. We're not even close. That's not even the intent. But the fact that I got to have that debate with somebody, native or non-native, is just ridiculous. The fact that we can't engage, even through parody or satire or sarcasm, a meaningful conversation on these issues. Look, we have to take more control of some of these conversations. We can't allow. We should have some control over or what is being voiced about who we are. Look, I know they did a show. I didn't even watch the show, so I'm not going to criticize the show itself about Native people enlisting in the armed forces. PBS ran it, and WBFO, the local public radio station, NPR station, created a thing, and they used some of our local Carson Waterman and his art, and look, they did and by most accounts, everybody said it was pretty good. But if you're not going to address what happened to our people at the hands of that same military, Oh, it doesn't matter that it's a decade or two or three or four or 50 years later. If you're not going to balance it out, there should be some sort of balance in the conversation. Our kids, even at 5 years old, why don't we have the conversation with them about what the Pledge of Allegiance means? I mean, our kids are learn to recite that at 5 years. They have no idea what the word's even saying. They're just mimicking. They're just memorizing the words to say. Same thing with the Star Spangled Banner. Hell, too many Native people were offended that Colin Kaepernick took a seat and then a knee over the national anthem. We have to do more. We have to take some responsibility. We need to take way more responsibility. And not just for our little kids in school. We should be engaging each other in this and saying, look, how do we get some of this stuff back? And is it an all or nothing proposition? I mean, is there a date? Do we say we have to be someplace by a certain date? No. That's why when I talk about decolonization, I say, look, as long as we're all kind of going in the same direction, we don't have to be on the same place on that path. But at least let's try to get more of our people on the path. We don't teach decolonization. Most adults don't even know what that means. Forget about our kids. So we're not having that conversation. Not even during our special month. Native American, what is it, National Native American Heritage Month? Not even during our special month. And look, Seneca Nation, they take days off. I mean, they have all kinds of holidays, special Seneca holidays that they take off. But most people don't even know what the hell they're for. We don't do public service announcements. And the Seneca Nation, they've got a radio station. And they've got a couple native radio personalities on that station. Only a couple. Not me. But they got a couple. But again, is it providing a service to the Seneca community, to the native community at large? No. Most of it's trying to, they're a commercial radio station. So they're trying to, most of the time, mitigate their losses. And I'm not condemning, what the station per se. But they've got a media department. They've got all kinds of resources. They've got an education department. They got a wellness center. I don't know how much that wellness center is using any of our own native techniques for healing people. I'm not saying they don't. I just don't know that they do. And I'm glad they finally jumped or took the plunge and got into developing an ag department. But that came with a struggle. I'm glad they're growing white corn and they're doing some of these things. And look, bison, the whole bit. I'm glad. And we should be doing more. And I'm not criticizing what they're doing, but that's just scratching the surface. We need to do more to promote who we are. Not just what the outside wants us to be. Christians, soldiers, lawyers, doctors, whatever. What do we want to be? How do we identify and define ourselves? Look, I want to thank you guys for listening. This is, again, a bit of an abridged show. We're trying to get out of here. So before we get snowed in, we've got, we got some weather coming our way. I do have to give an announcement. I will not be doing a show on Saturday. Lots of stuff coming in. I've got a date with my wife. I'll admit. So Sunday night I'll be doing our weekend show. I'm not in New York this week, so I won't be doing a Thursday show. I thought I might come in. Maybe I'll do something, just kind of a brief thing on Thursday here at the studio. I don't know, but don't expect a WBAI show, a 2-hour show on Thursday. But I will be back, and I'm going to try to be on time on Sunday. So look for us. Let's Talk Native Sunday night, not Saturday night, but Sunday night, and And maybe we'll even go through some of this stuff again, and I'll cite some other examples and maybe some solutions, because at some point we have to recognize the problem and then begin to come up with solutions. And so let's go down that path. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native. Thanks for listening. Yahweh.